What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. Over the weekend, controversy blew up online around PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5 with a recent update or accidental change even that has now added in DRM with online check-ins for digital purchases, and there's a lot of confusion going on, but I figured we would take a look at that here today. Also, we are going to be talking about a big time and long-running RPG finally coming to the Switch 2 with a bit of a catch, and this week we have SAROS coming out. Reviews did go live to close out last week, and it turns out we may have another potential Game of the Year contender on our hands. All of that and more. Guys, if you enjoy these videos, make sure you hit that like button. Helps out a ton. And if you're new here to the Spawnwave channel, make sure you subscribe down below. Guys, we have a weekday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern time, keeping you up to date on the world of gaming news. So even if you don't get a notification in the morning, just know there's probably a video here for you to check out. And we're going to start today with Valve and the Steam Machine, the Steam Controller, and the Steam Frame. People, of course, waiting to hear any kind of news around pricing and release timing for these. Well, we're starting to see some movement in the back end, which specifically seems to have to do with the Steam Controller, as one review went a bit live a bit early, and we heard the price point for the controller was $100. But on top of that, we can see over on Insider Gaming, this following up that story saying, I'm to understand that Valve is getting closer to confirming everything. They've been going back and forth internally on pricing and whether they would be willing to take a loss on the cost, at least in the short term. It's unclear what decision has been made, but the internal belief is that an announcement on a release is getting closer. So it seems like we're about to see at least the controller get a full reveal with pricing and release date. Again, pricing seems to be $100 based on that early review that went up, but it's very possible that they are separating the controller from the Steam Machine and the Steam Frame. I prefer that they just announce everything all at once with even staggered release dates, like we get the controller first and the Steam Machine later, but Valve certainly has to get moving here one way or the other since, well, we're about to be in May, and yeah, they probably wanted to have this system out, all this stuff, probably a month or two ago minimum. Also, it looks like Walmart will be selling physical Switch 2 games that have that disparity between digital and physical at the same price as the digital title. So, like, people notice this over on Walmart's website. If you go there, it does say you have to see the price in the cart for Splatoon Raiders. However, when you add it to your cart, Splatoon Raiders physically is the same price as Splatoon Raiders digitally, so $50 across the board. Of course, Splatoon Raiders does come all in the cartridge, so it's not like a game key card thing or anything like that. It's just Walmart doing what actually they did. This might have been 8 years ago now. It was around the early stages of the Switch 1 life cycle. I remember this, where Walmart would take the new games and what seemed to be, they would sell them at their cost almost. So you'd see a $60 game be $51 or $50.99. And they were doing that actually just about across the board for many different games for a while, and they just stopped. Well, now it seems like maybe they're doing that to once again attract traffic to their store or their website, because in this case, yes, I would just go to Walmart's site or store and just buy Splatoon Raiders there, because I'd like to have it physically since it is on the cartridge. And there's really no advantage then for me to buy it digitally because it's the same price. So there you go. If you wanted to get these games physically and pay the digital price, you could just go check out Walmart. Oh, and it looks like we're getting closer and closer to the full reveal for the Alien Isolation sequel. This was announced that it was happening early stages, but they wanted to let us know. This was at the end of 2024. So it's been about a year and a half now, but we have this teaser here, and this is called False Sense of Security. Of course, a very ominous atmosphere as you'd expect for a sequel to the 2014 game, Alien Isolation. Yes, it's been a while. I mean, at the end of this year, it'll have been 12 years, since the game released. So I think we're still a year or two off maybe from this one, considering it was early development back at the end of 2024. But it is at least nice to see that they are gearing up to talk about it in some way. And just thinking about where we are now technology-wise for not only the systems, but just a lot of the techniques when it comes to what they could certainly do with a sequel for Alien Isolation, it is pretty exciting. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with Sony, the PlayStation 4, the PlayStation 5, and what appears to be a DRM check-in that's recently been added. And we have people even testing out this theory through ways of opening up their PlayStation 4, the PlayStation 5, and resetting the internal clock. But we'll get to that in a moment here. Let's first start actually with this tweet here from Lance McDonald, it says, hugely terrible DRM has now been rolled out to all PS4 and PS5 digital games. Every digital game you buy now requires an online check-in every 30 days. If you buy a digital game and don't connect your console to the internet for 30 days, your license will be removed. All right, so he has a screenshot here, and this is very important to note. All right, so there has been a 30-day check-in before, and it's been ongoing for like years now, when it comes to PlayStation Plus titles. And in fact, some have actually shared around screenshots of a very similar like screen as you're seeing here. And that's just because from what I've seen, the screenshot was going around was a PlayStation Plus downloaded title. Yes, you have to check in for a subscription service that can lapse after 30 days, right? Like, so if you look at PlayStation Plus Extra tier, yes, there is a yearly option, but there's also a monthly option. So yes, if you have something that does rely on a subscription service being up to date, you have to check in every 30 days. I think most people kind of understand that. It's more the digital purchases that is a little odd to see, because this is something apparently that's been kind of recent. And so this seems to have rolled out sometime at the beginning of April or the end of March, as titles before then that have been purchased are not actually affected by this. So recent titles in the last few weeks, people have actually been able to test the theory on this again. And like, so for example, you can see this. This was a tweet that was put out by Akiko Mori Media, saying the PS5 digital game lockout results, doing an entire live stream for multiple hours, actually showing how a digitally purchased game in the last few weeks now, when you have yourself connected to the internet, everything's synced up, it plays fine. But then when you pull the CMOS battery, which they actually opened up their PS5 and did all of that, they put it back together. And what that does then is it desyncs the clock. You then disconnect it from the internet, of course, so it cannot resync. And while digital purchased games before this time period, March 2026, played fine and started up, any of the other games that are bought in the last month and a half or so would not start, and said you had to reconnect to the internet so that you can get your licenses up to date and synced. And same thing that we were seeing with the PS4, as Modded Warfare did a video with the same exact idea, just seeing if, hey, if the PS4 was out of sync with the CMOS battery removed, would the digital purchases made recently work? And they did not. And this, of course, has led to a ton of confusion around what exactly Sony is doing here, and if actually it's even intentional, as like we can see, this is from Does It Play, saying received word from an anonymous insider saying the Sony DRM issue is unintentional. From what we gathered, Sony accidentally broke something while fixing an exploit. They've known about the confusing UI for a while, but didn't see it as urgent. Hoping for a clarifying statement now, and that's kind of where we are at this point, is people are just looking to Sony, because the Lance McDonald tweet that was originally showing this off has more than 6 million views. So clearly people have noticed this. And in fact, in all these different messages that Sony puts out on their official accounts throughout the weekend, people are replying, asking about this situation, because again, here's the thing. We've discussed the all digital future multiple times ad nauseum, right? But the thing that comes down to is, oh, the digital side is the same as the physical side, and it's just more convenient now, and that's really it. But the question around ownership constantly comes up. And when you see stuff like this, it should be coming up constantly, because it's very weird that you would just a la carte buy a digital game and have to check in every 30 days. In fact, the last time I remember this all came up and was a big thing, Don Matrick was on stage with the Xbox One, and we saw how that went. Sony knocked him out first round by just handing a physical copy of a PS4 game to someone else. We've come a long way now. So here's hoping, if this was accidental, Sony can work this out. Maybe they have some kind of messaging this week just to clarify what happened, because I will say, in their defense, there have been many, many exploits that have been discovered for the PlayStation 4 and kind of even the PlayStation 5 now recently. So it wouldn't shock me if they did actually mess something up in the back end as they're trying to fix some of these exploits. But now everyone's kind of looking at them to see if they have any kind of response to this. Next up, let's talk about Final Fantasy XIV, which has had an entire convention that's been going on for the game, and the game's been long running. I remember back on the PS3 when they had to take the game back, take it offline, and then reboot it, and it was a whole thing. But I mean, it's been across multiple generations now, and we've even seen it show up on Xbox. So naturally, you assume it would eventually make its way to Nintendo's platform, in this case with the Switch 2. And indeed, it is doing just that. But we had some other information as well. Here's the press release. This was issued by Square Enix over on their website, saying they have announced Evercold, the 6th expansion for the critically acclaimed Final Fantasy XIV Online, set to launch in January 2027. Now, they have an entire list of additional announcements here, along with that expansion: 2 new jobs, a level cap increase, new cities, distinctive new areas, new gigantic constructs, and other monstrous threats to overcome, all kinds of stuff happening here. They even have a fun little crossover, it looks like, Ghost of Desire, that's Final Fantasy XIV crossing over with Evangelions. That's pretty cool, I think. But here's the other part, of course, the Switch 2 release. That is a thing, it is happening. It looks like that's going to be releasing in August. There will be an early access period. There will be a whole free month before launch. Here's the catch though, okay? So, and it kind of explains maybe what the holdup has been for Final Fantasy XIV moving over to the Switch 2. There will be a separate subscription specific to the Switch 2 version. Okay, so let's say you already subscribe to play Final Fantasy XIV, because there's like a monthly fee or what have you to play this MMORPG. You would then need another subscription to go on top of that, a Switch 2 subscription for it. Now, if you're really, really into Final Fantasy XIV, you're like, finally, it's coming to the Switch 2, I'm getting it, I'm doing the subscription. It is 50% off then if you already have, say, a subscription, I guess, using on the PC or the PlayStation 5 or the Xbox or anything like that. And it was kind of, I guess, sort of explained here by Yoshi P, saying, after discussions with Nintendo, it was decided that the Switch 2 version of Final Fantasy XIV would require a separate subscription. Again, this was decided after many months of discussions with Nintendo, and I understand that this is different to how we've done things before. Now, he does go on to say that there were some concessions made here by Nintendo, specifically if you just want to play Final Fantasy XIV and you have that subscription, you won't need an NSO subscription through Nintendo, like the yearly, say $20 per year, in order to play this. So I guess that's good. The only thing I see here is Nintendo wanted a piece of the pie when it comes to the subscription service that Square Enix would be getting, say, each month for Final Fantasy XIV. But they also showed it playing there on stage, and they mentioned it as, I mean, solid 30 FPS or so for the game, but I'm sure we'll see all kinds of frame rate comparisons and stuff down the road when it does release later this year. As for Final Fantasy XIV, I've tried it here and there. It's just, I understand it's a game that if you start playing it, it's pretty much going to eat up all your time. It's an MMORPG that is designed to do just that, especially with the wealth of content that is just available. So I recognize it as a good game, one of the top tier MMORPGs even, but I also understand I just probably wouldn't have the time to keep up with Final Fantasy XIV while playing everything else than just all the other stuff in life at this point. But hey, it's if you've been curious about it, good news if you want to play it on the Switch 2, as it's going to be making its way there later on this year. Next up, let's talk about SAROS. That is out this week. They're doing the early access thing, so technically if you pay a little extra money, you can start playing it, I believe, tomorrow. Otherwise, you'll have to wait till Thursday the 30th to pick it up and start playing. And I think that's what I'm going to do, because I want to get it physically. The thing with the early access is you then have to commit to getting it digitally, and this is a game that I would like to have on disc from there for the collection. But reviews did go live, and we can see over on Metacritic, currently sitting at an 88. That's on 94 positive and 4 mixed. So this then places it right behind Resident Evil Requiem, Pacopia, as one of the highest rated games of the year. And it's 2 points, I believe, ahead of Returnal. So Housemarque rolling during the PS5 generation. One of the few, I guess, first-party studios from Sony that's turned in multiple games for the PS5 generation. So there you go. All right, let's start from the top here. Let's take a look at a few reviews. Okay, so we have GameSpew. The nice thing about this Metacritic stuff, whenever I go over it, I learn about all kinds of outlets I've never heard of before by doing this. So GameSpew gave it 100, saying Housemarque is back with yet another fantastic fast-paced third-person shooter. SAROS builds on Returnal, delivering deeper and more enjoyable gameplay, as well as a new permanent progression system and modifiers which allow you to tweak the difficulty to your preferences. All in all, it's Housemarque's best game yet. Loot Level Chill gives it 100, saying as a follow-up to Returnal, SAROS is excellent. It builds on the foundations of Celine's adventure, is a sensational slice of bullet hell shooter goodness. On the opposite end, however, we do have a couple of mixed reviews, with IGN giving it a 70, saying SAROS tries at an interesting and ambitious story it isn't always able to effectively tell, but Housemarque has once again proved that its bullet hell sensibilities mesh incredibly well with fluid and challenging action. Restart.run gave it a 70, saying, SAROS is a game I'll be chewing on for the rest of the year. It's a game that has a lot of flaws, but makes up for them in showcasing the complicated and messy dynamics that humans find themselves in. An easy recommendation for those looking for a bullet hell with a deep mythos around it. A game that isn't perfect and is messy, much like all of us. All right, thanks, Restart Run. Anyway, the overall consensus, though, visually speaking, it's one of the more impressive games on the PlayStation 5, and with a PS5 Pro, that in itself is exciting. But coming off of Returnal with Housemarque, their last game, I enjoyed that quite a bit, but I do see some of the flaws we had with that game. Like, some of the runs were incredibly long, especially as you got further into the game. Apparently, SAROS does seem to fix that a bit, where you can have shorter runs while still having full progression, because you'll just keep adding on to your character. And yes, eventually, if there is a boss you're having a hard time with, it kind of just brute force your way past those different elements. So I'm excited. I'm ready for this game, and I'll be picking it up as soon as it releases, again, physically, August 30th. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about Fairgames, because we're getting more reports, as apparently there have been closed alpha tests that are going on that are under NDA. But of course, even with Fairgames, people want to talk about it, and it seems like Insider Gaming had the scoop on this one, which we can see. They say screenshots of the game's playtest Discord showed a massive amount of negative player feedback, with players criticizing game-defining features like movement, NPCs, the class system, and more. Others who played the game tell Insider Gaming that they either played a few games and stopped, or teammates would leave mid-match and not play again because the game felt incomplete or boring. Whew, that's certainly some feedback during the the focus group testing or the closed alpha testing. I mean, if people can't make it through the closed alpha, and that's the thing, you're playing in these lobbies, the games that people are clearly interested in trying the game if they've gone through all the steps of signing up, being chosen to play in this closed alpha, signing all the NDAs, and you're halfway through the game, you go, I don't really want to play this anymore. That's not great. And we've had previous reports that one of the things that kept getting brought up for Fairgames were them trying to find the fun in it. And it has the Fairgames name is already putting it behind the 8 ball before people have even played it. You know, like that already is stopping people. It's a deterring factor right there. So this is, I don't know what they're going to do with it. It's funny because we hear about all these games and games getting canceled, studios being shut down, but Fairgames persists somehow, some way. And I really do want to hear what exactly Sony is seeing in this game. Granted, we haven't really, other than some of these reports that get out there, we haven't seen a full-on presentation for this, a state of play, something where they walk us through their vision for the game. But everything we hear about is just bad with playtests. The name is already in trouble right out of the gate, just based on what we've seen from that little trailer that they put out years ago now. So I wouldn't be shocked if this game did get canceled and we just stopped hearing about it and they move on, and then eventually a Bloomberg report comes out. It's like, oh yeah, they did cancel Fairgames. Because if they launch this thing and it's another Concord, and then we find out they actually did spend a lot of money because they also bought the studio that's been making it with Haven, only to shut them down, it'd be a whole thing. So I'm curious what the play is here with Fairgames, because how much longer does it even need to stay in development at that point? This is going to be a 10-year cycle? I don't know. But not looking great right now for Fairgames. Shocking, I know. And before we go to the comments of the day, we'll take a look at the poll that I posted here yesterday, where I ask, did you own an Xbox 360 during the 7th generation? Specifically during that time, right? Not like, oh, I just got one a few years ago. No, like, you were there while all this was going down. You could have picked it up at the beginning, could have picked it up towards the end even, right? 67% say yes. 33% say no. So, okay, a majority of people, like by a fair margin here, I'd say, did have an Xbox 360 during that time. Okay, some even in the comments were like, I still own it. It still works. It's actually a lot of fun to go back and play some of these games now and then on that system. All right, so I had an idea, because we're seeing some things change within Microsoft and Xbox, and I did a whole video on that over the weekend, so check that out if you want to see more in-depth thoughts on everything that Asher Sharma is saying, these memos getting thrown around, reports. But I was curious about specifically the player base on the 360, the Xbox One, the Xbox Series. So I will be running these polls and, just answer honestly where you were like with a system at that time. So we'll check in with the Xbox One and we'll check in with the Xbox Series. Maybe even the original Xbox. I just had a feeling the Xbox 360 was probably going to turn in these sorts of results, because looking around, that's still the most popular era I remember for Microsoft specifically. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day as you're seeing here. This is from Noon Dragoon, who says, "Oh yeah, I work for a software company, and one of our company goals this year is to incorporate AI usage into our daily workflows. I hate it. It just makes my job more annoying because then I need to double check that the AI got the information right instead of just being able to do it myself the first time." Yeah, I've noticed that AI it gets stuff wrong. So if you ever ask it questions, ask it to also provide you sources that it's pulling from or that it's found. So that is the nice thing. Use it as an advanced search engine. Like, hey, find me all this information for research, go out to the internet, grab it, put it into like a nice little bullet point presentation. And then with each one, give me sources for where you're finding this stuff. So then you can click through and you can go check it yourself. But you're right. You do kind of have to, not as a babysit it, but check its work. Right? So like, you're like a student is like out there like doing all this work. It's like, okay, I have to check your work because I can't guarantee that this is absolutely correct and just put an A on the paper. And that's kind of what you're seeing with AI. I mean, it's gotten better as we've gone, like ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini. As newer versions have rolled out, they've gotten more and more accurate, but sometimes they'll say some crazy stuff. I've seen it forget entire generations for PlayStation before. Like it's convinced that there was never a PlayStation 3. This has happened. I've seen it. So you can't really take its word for it, but hey, I'm sure plenty of workplaces really want to try to incorporate it or have it follow along with you so that, yeah, probably eventually it can just do your job for you, and that'll be a fun day. And ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today. If you missed last week's Newswave, I'll leave it up here in a card, or maybe you want to hear my thoughts on Pragmata after I've gone through it and why I think it's the kind of game that the gaming industry needs right now. I'll leave that right below. Thanks, guys, for watching, and I'll see you next time.